Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm Crit, and today I'll guide you through Abyss Floor 105. As usual, this will be an in-depth guide, and aside from the team comp I used on this floor, I'll focus on the mechanics the most. This is because once you understand how the fight will play out, you will be able to build your own team, in case you prefer a different approach than mine. So, without further ado, let's get down to business. Okay, the floor is made up of two separate fights. However, the fun fact about this floor is that we will actually spend most of our time in its first half. The second fight, in fact, usually takes much less time than the first one. The other big thing about this floor is that there are a couple of different approaches we can take in regard to team building. The most used strategy to get past the first fight especially is related to abusing stuns and sleep CCs, while also cheesing a specific nuke mechanic. Well, I took a completely different approach to the first fight, and instead opted for the brute force route. You'll see exactly what I mean during the explanation of the first fight. Now, let's proceed with the units I chose for the job. The first unit is gonna be our story hero, Adventurer Ras. I think by now this unit needs no introduction, but just in case someone's new here, Ras is a defensive tank unit with self-sustain and a defense up buff for the whole team. Furthermore, he can inflict defense break, trigger a dual attack from the ally with the highest attack, and finally he can dispel a single buff from an enemy when needed. Oh, and by the way, bonus trait. He's completely free to play once you have finished this quest. This amazing defensive unit has it all basically. The only downside will be that his damage is a bit lackluster. However, this will not be an issue due to our next units. I equipped my Ras with a speed plus health set and gave him the Aureus artifact, just to increase his defensive abilities even further. For sustain, I opted for probably the most versatile PvE healer in the game, Tamarin. She has in fact a small heal on her S1, and a good AoE heal on her S2 that can be used every couple of turns. But what really diversifies Tamarin from any other healer in the game is her S3 signature skill, which allows her to transform into her idol form, while also completely healing Tamarin at 100% HP. While in the idol stance, Tamarin gets access to a couple of brand new skills, for a total of 3 turns, after which she will revert back to her normal form. The two aforementioned skills are the definition of insanity. The first is a big AoE heal that also gives a huge buff to the CR bar of every party member, Tamarin included. The other is a light AoE attack that triggers a dual attack on the target from the ally with the most attack, and has an AoE buff strip effect on the enemies. Finally, if soul burned, the skill also brings a big AoE heal for the team. Overall, I'd argue that Tamarin is even more versatile than Ras in this comp, as she allows for AoE healing, extra damage, CR boosts, and dispels. My Tamarin was also equipped with a speed plus health set. I chose Idol's Cheer as her artifact to maximize the team damage output potential. However, other options such as Wondrous Potion Vial are also very good choices. This next unit is none other than the free-to-play single-target champion. Our girl, Commander Lorina, is in fact a heavy hitter. She has an amazing passive ability that automatically boosts her attack by a substantial amount every time she hits an enemy, and that stacks up to 5 times. Aside from that, her S1 is a strong single target hit that scales with the enemy's HP and pushes Lorina's CR forward. The S3 is what you can call a real single-target nuke that pushes back the enemies on the CR bar and increases its damage as the enemy's health decreases. Also, if soul burned, grants an extra turn to Lorina. I opted for an attack plus crit set for Lorina. However, penetration, speed and critical damage sets are all good alternatives depending on the stats you got on them. Finally, her artifact was her cutter, which makes her even more powerful. But here really, any artifact that increases damage output will work just fine. And finally, it's time for the real MVP of this floor, which is going to be Landy. This unit works very well against enemies that make use of buffs often. However, Landy is also what I usually call a devastation unit, and she does exactly that. Now let's see what this beast can do. The S1 is a strong single target hit which increases Landy's own CR by 15% and doubles that amount when the target hit is buffed. Her S2 is a passive that works similarly to the Lorina's one, but with the difference that it is stronger and takes less turn to fully buff Landy's attack. Furthermore, allows the stacking of fighting spirits, which is Landy's unique mechanic, and allows for free and empowered S3 resets. Her ultimate skill is what Chaos looks like, thankfully in our favor. The S3 is in fact a huge AoE nuke, especially when empowered by fighting spirits, that also buffs every party member's speed for 2 turns, and can also be soul burned for an extra turn with Landy. The speed increase in particular is very strong on this floor, and is definitely what made this comp click for me. The set I was originally running on Landy was a double crit set, since at the time I had no other options for reaching the 100% crit rate mark. Of course, try to use any full damaging set if you can. Overall on Landy I will choose either the attack plus crit set or the crit damage plus crit set. The artifact I decided to give her is the Warhorn, to increase the team's offensive abilities even further. Okay, it's time for some alternative units you could use in case you're missing something. Adventurer Russ is straight up the best tank choice for this floor, in my opinion, and should not be replaced. But, just in case you haven't built him yet, you could use Unbound Knight Arrowwell to ensure a few stuns on the first boss, Camilla to cheat the Scorpion's S3 completely with the skill nullifiers, and even Tempest Surrein, since she basically cannot be one-shotted by any nuke thanks to her passive. Finally, General Purgis could also be used. Just keep in mind that the support he brings will be limited during the second fight. Tamarin could be virtually replaced by any healer, better of course if it also has some offensive capabilities. Since the second fight of this floor does not encourage non-damaging skills use, then I would avoid units that heavily rely on them, such as Diane and Amomo. If I had to choose, I would pick someone like Ruel, Destina or Aketis, and if I needed a speed buff due to not having Landy, then I would pick Anos. Commander Lorina is another free-to-play unit worth building, but of course is easily replaceable by any other strong single-target DPS, such as Luna. You could also use Savior Edin, since she has a single-target nuke that penetrates defense and gives invincibility to the whole party for a turn. Other powerful general DPSs could be units like Roy and Sermia. For the Landy slot, finding a replacement is hard. The closest unit I could think of is bomb model Kenna, which also has a speed buff on RS3, but does not deal the same amount of damage as Landy, sadly. You could also try to use Luluka for her shields during the first fight, and the defense breaks during the second. Just keep in mind that you will probably need to use Anos as healer for keeping the speed buff up. Finally, if everything else fails, you can still use the Debuffs approach with units like Dizzy. Okay, so for the first fight we have a really annoying one, unfortunately for us. This boss is a huge pain in the butt and can easily last more than the final boss we will see later. We have in fact a huge scorpion, which is the boss, Scorpetra, that is accompanied by 3 smaller ones. Let's start with the small ones first. These guys are really nothing special in terms of raw damage dealt to our team. However, they can definitely annoy you with random poisons and unhealable debuffs. The only thing that you need to keep in mind is that they are not squishy, and you will need to focus them first in order to safely deal with the boss later. Scorpetra is, however, another story, as it possesses some odd and powerful abilities. The first thing that you need to know is that this boss is immune to any kind of debuff, except stun and sleep. But with the comp I chose, this is not a problem, as it does not rely on CCing the enemies, but instead on buffing the allies. Moreover, the Scorpion's attack and speed stats will increase with every turn it takes, so the less the fight lasts, the better. And if that wasn't enough, this boss can take hits like there's no tomorrow, and that's the reason of the long fight duration. Now let's talk about the skills. Scorpetra has an annoying AoE S1 that reduces all party members' CR by a random amount, up to 50%, that also stuns the allies with 10% or less CR for 1 turn. The S2 is a dual target ability that has a high chance of defense break its targets, and can definitely cause problems because of this, especially if it is followed up by an S1 and you haven't been able to get rid of the break in the while. Scorpetra's ultimate ability is indeed an interesting one, as it is a single target nuke that only targets the frontline hero first, and ignores defense by 100%, essentially one-shotting everything that is not substantially bulky. I honestly did not like the RB Resurrection strat, so I just decided to hit the nukes with ARAS, and to quickly heal with his S3 afterwards. Keep in mind that to do this you will need a good amount of HP, as the defense gets penetrated completely. So to deal with these enemies, as I said earlier, I took the brute force approach, which is the equivalent of saying that I made the fight a tank and spank, hitting big damage with ARAS and Tamarin and dealing as much in return with Lorena and Landy. So the first thing you need to do is to get rid of these small guys, otherwise they will make things harder for sure later on. After that, when only the boss remains, the fight becomes a real rush to kill it, before his stacking passive becomes too strong for the team to sustain. So, according to what I just said, try to use everything that is available to you in order to deal damage to this big boy. I mean, Landy speed buff, Ras soul burn S1 at every turn, and Tamarin's idle form on cooldown as well. You will notice that aside from Tamarin's CR boosts, the other huge help will come from Landy's speed buffs. Using these tools consistently will help you cycle turns and souls like crazy, and hopefully you will be able to kill the Scorpion before its damage becomes unbearable. Okay, now that you dealt with that annoying Scorpion, there's another fight waiting for you just ahead. Do not worry though, as it will definitely be faster than the previous one. You will be faced by Bloodblade Karin and 2 support Watchers heads on her back, one light and one dark. The Light Watcher should be the first one you kill, as it can remove buffs from your team and debuffs from the enemies. Most importantly, this head will basically block any form of combat readiness increase until it's alive, and it can be hard to kill, as its damage taken cannot exceed 25% health per hit. This head is very dangerous, as it handicaps your Tamarin's idle form, as well as removes all your team's buffs and the eventual ARAS defense break. The Dark Watcher, on the other hand, can decrease your team members' CR, while increasing it for BBK. It also has the same health percentage mechanic as the Light Head, and completely blocks all passive abilities and CD resetting skills and abilities on your team. This head is also annoying, however can be taken more lightly than the other one, at least with this comp. Now for the enemy waifu. Her first passive is that she makes every enemy immune to poisons. Aside from that, she also increases most of her stats gradually, as her health decreases, and can heal the ally with the lowest health by a small amount, herself included. The most annoying thing about this boss is that whenever you decide to use a non-attack skill, she will buff herself with a reflect buff for one turn. Finally, this boss fight has an enrage, meaning that after the 5th turn has passed, Bloodblade Karin's damage dealt will go up by 100%. After the 11th turn has passed, she will basically enter God mode and start one-shotting people at an absurd speed, until no one remains alive. Her S1 is tied to her S2, and together are really not a big deal. When she uses her S1, in fact, she will deal a light single target attack, and boost her attack for a turn. Immediately after, the S2 follow-up attack will activate onto the same target, and BBK will heal proportionally to the damage dealt. Her ultimate is an AoE that dispels all buffs from your team, removes 20 souls, and heals Karin by 5%. The first S3 she will use will also not be a big deal, while the second one will hit like a truck, due to her passive stacking buffs. So, what should we do for dealing with this trio? The first thing to do is to get rid of the Light Head ASAP, so that the full potential of your Tamarin will unlock. After that, you will have a choice. If you feel confident enough with your damage output, you can also kill the Dark Head to ease the fight even more. However, with the team comp I used, this appeared to be unnecessary. The other choice is in fact to straight up focus Karin with everything you got, to burn it down before the 11th turn. And this is literally all you need to know in order to complete this fight. Now, I wanted to give a couple of tips to deal with this fight more easily. First tip is to try to save Landy's ultimate for when you phase out from the previous fight. Your CR boost will be restricted from the Light Head, however, your speed will not be, and we can definitely take advantage of Landy's buffs. The second is to get rid of all your souls before Karin uses her first S3, so that the soul removing effect will not bother you. I, for example, used Xeon for this task to increase my damage output even more. Be careful though, as the Light Head will cleanse debuffs from the enemies, so if you decide to use my same strat, then use the Xeon right after the head has taken its turn. The third one is to play around the Reflect buff. If you need to heal and Karin puts up the Reflect buff for a turn, just attack her with Ras or Tam instead to remove it without taking too much damage. Also, letting the buff expire by itself while you focus the heads is indeed a viable option. And my final tip is that with Tamarin you really do not have to heal directly. If you want to in fact avoid the Reflect buff altogether, then just soul burn her S1 in both her forms to still heal your whole team without triggering the buff. Well guys, this was the whole fight. I'll leave you the full original clear video in the description below and let you go. I really hope this was in any way useful to you. And if it was, please leave me a like, because that really helps. Also, let me know if you want to see the guide for a specific floor next. But this is all for now, so thank you for watching and have a great day. Crit signing out.